Hey folks, on today's episode of SysAdmin Weekly, I've got Eric Syram back on the show, and we are talking about every sysadmin's favorite topic, and that is IT documentation. Now, you all know what it's like when you come into work in the morning, right? There's tickets flying everywhere, there's high severity issues, systems are down, people are knocking on the door, projects need to be done. I mean, documentation is often one of the last things that's on your mind as a sysadmin. Now, when you've got documentation in the works, sometimes you have to stop and ask yourself questions, right? Where should I be storing documentation? What style should we be writing it in? What tools should we be using? What happens if that documentation is not available at 2 a.m. when systems have gone belly up and there's nobody else around, right? These are all questions you need to be asking about your documentation, and they're all questions that Eric and I answer on today's episode of SysAdmin Weekly. Hope you enjoy. Hey everyone, that's a new week. That means it's time for another episode of SysAdmin Weekly. This is your podcast by sysadmins for sysadmins and dedicated to all the tireless tech folks out there working in the trenches to keep our digital world spinning. As always, I'm your host, Andy Serwich, and I've got my very frequent co-host with me today. I've got Eric Syram. How's it going, Eric?
I'm all right, Andy. How you doing?
Doing good. Can't complain. So I think I say that just about every show. One of these days I'm going to be like, I'm doing okay. And, if I ever say that, then I'm going to have to explain it all because everyone's going to be like, whoa, what's wrong with it? No, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Anyway, we have an interesting topic today. I know I say that every week, but it's an interesting topic nonetheless. And I have found with this particular topic, sysadmins fall into two camps. They either love it or they hate it. And I think there's more sysadmins that fall into the hate it camp than fall into the like it camp. And I'm, of course, talking about documentation. Every sysadmin's favorite thing, documentation. Now, I will say that when it comes to having documentation, I always greatly enjoyed having documentation. Didn't always like writing the documentation, right? And I think that's probably where most sysadmins fall. I don't know where you fall on that spectrum there, Eric, but that's kind of what my thought is.
We'll probably tease out my thoughts as we go through on it because I don't really have a simple answer. I can say that when I'm trying to accomplish something and then somebody's like, you need to document that. No, I don't want to. But then when I get going on it, it's fine.
Got it. Sounds good. I have some nuanced answers to that too, but we're going to get into that. But before we do that, we of course have our regular recurring segments on the show. Now, normally I would do a news react segment here, but the last couple of episodes, we've had some really good feedback and some conversational comments from many of our listeners, and it's always great to see. So if you have a comment on the show or you want to share a story or just share your thoughts or a funny joke, you can always comment on the episode either on YouTube if you're watching there, or you can also comment on the episodes at Spotify as well. Outside of that, if you just want to drop us an email, you can always reach us at contact@sysadminweekly.com, and that will get you in our inboxes. So we love having, listener/viewer comments. It just, it's good to know that you guys are finding value in the show, and I love sharing comments and feedback because it helps drive the discussion, right? So by all means, don't be afraid. We don't bite or anything. So also, I guess while I'm talking about that, I'll get our usual plugs out of the way as well. We do have www.sysadminweekly.com. That is just a very simple website that contains all the different links associated with the show. So, all the different platforms that we're available on. And it also has a link to our companion newsletter, which is at newsletter.sysadminweekly.com. And that's a weekly newsletter that gets published every Wednesday. I was doing it on Tuesdays, but it's Wednesday now for a reason. So it comes out every Wednesday. It includes a bunch of great resources. So we include some of the latest links to the current episodes of the show. We also talk about a previous episode of the show. And then we dive into a bunch of community content. I do an editorial on some IT topic, and it's really a good curation of resources for sysadmins. We even include some talk about utilities and tools. I've been known to throw in a markdown template or two there in the past. So again, that's newsletter.sysadminweekly.com. So with that, let's get to our comments. We had one comment here on one of our previous episodes here. So this is a comment that was on the episode about what counts as a security breach and what doesn't. Now, in that episode, it was you and I, Eric, actually, we're kind of talking about the definition of the word compromise, right? And how, it's not as simple as a yes or no, right? It's more nuanced than that. But our commenter said this, and I'm quoting, right? So this was an interesting topic. Back in college, this came up during one of our cybersecurity classes. Each student had 5 minutes to come up with a definition, 20 minutes for a cause, and 30 minutes to write out a method or way to tackle said problem. It tested us to think outside the virtual, in parentheses, box, outside the box, virtual, I see what you did there. Anyway, so basically they're saying, they had to go through an exercise of, what is a compromise or a security breach? What is a theoretical breach? And then how would they handle it, right? So good exercise for somebody in the cybersecurity class to go through. They continue. I think when dealing with company data, private data that gets handled outside the company in an unauthorized way would count as a breach. Inside the company, we would speak more of compromise terms. So basically what they're saying is, okay, company data gets leaked in some way, shape, or form to the outside, right? And that, would count as a breach. Now, I would agree with that for the most part. I think it depends on your risk profile, right? And when I say that, it depends on what it was that was leaked to the outside world, right? So, I mean, if the company's PowerPoint templates was leaked, it probably doesn't matter, right? Not a whole lot of risk there, but if it's the HR database, that's definitely a breach, right? That's like, the sky is falling. We might have to notify the shareholders, et cetera, type of thing. So definitely. And yeah, the comment there about inside the company would speak more of compromise terms. I think what they're getting at there is, when we talk about like insider threats, or not even just insider threats, but maybe users accessing data that they probably shouldn't access, or maybe you find out they have access to something that they shouldn't, I think what they're getting at is you can't necessarily call that a breach, but it is a security incident, right? Because they have access to something that they shouldn't. Again, it comes down to the situation. If, a contractor accesses the HR database, that's worse than, again, somebody, browsing the marketing logo folder, right? So again, that's my take on that comment, Eric. I don't know if you have anything you want to add before we move on.
I really don't. One thing I really liked about it is not actually even dealing with the topic at hand. But I really like the security roundtable practice that they put them through.
Oh, yeah.
That's a really good thing to do.
For
Like,
sure.
even when you're not in school anymore, it's a good thing to do is, hey, and sometimes what they'll do is like the security office might just come out and go, all right, grab 6 admins and this is what's happening, deal with it. And it's not real, and it's not real going into it, but it's like, deal with it. What do you do?
Yep.
How do you.
Yep.
So security roundtables are great practice. I'm glad they experienced that in college. So
it's a good exercise, and I can speak from my own experience that when I was strictly like that traditional sysadmin working on infrastructure, networking, um, you know, storage, all that stuff, right? Clustering. Security was always kind of a consideration, but it was always secondary, right? It wasn't, the goal was, hey, let's stand up this cluster, but not necessarily, thinking about security 100% of the time. Now that I've been in security for a number of years now, I found that when I'm building stuff out, my thought process has changed a lot. Because now, like, every step of the process, like, my brain is just like, how could this be exploited? How could this be abused? Like, oh, you're making that choice for management. What if somebody did this? And like, my brain's instantly thinking like all of these possible scenarios where an attacker might access a management console or right. So when you start really like officially, professionally doing security, I feel like it changes your thought process, which is good. And it's a little bit different than the old SysAdmin days where security was, yeah, part of the job, but it wasn't a huge part of the job, I guess, is where I'm going with that. So yes, those roundtable exercises, fantastic exercise to go through. Like you said, put your team through it too, right? On the regular, those roundtables are fantastic. So anyway, on to our next segment of the show here, our opening segment. We've got Nerd Hour. And of course, it doesn't take an hour, but that's just what we call the segment. And it's basically that segment of the show where my co-host and I talk about the nerdy, geeky things that we've been working on. And Eric, I'm going to let you go first on this one. What have you been working on lately?
I have an easy one. I just wired in my first home security doorbell and working on getting the entire house wired in.
Very
So
cool.
yeah, it's yeah, I don't I'm not even sure where I'm going with that. It's just like, yeah, my first deal with this because I didn't want to deal with subscriptions and stuff. So there's all the research and then what's
Yeah.
good, what's bad, what is so much fun.
I've,
And my own paranoia is so everything's battery operated now.
oh,
I don't
yeah.
like that. I don't like that. But because I'm big on like battery operated is my thing, but I want mainline power with just like an APC or a cyber power backup. I don't want in things I need to go outside, climb up on a ladder, pull things
Right.
down, open them up, get a
Right.
battery pack out, put it back. I don't want to deal with all that. So yeah.
So mine uses a battery as well. And my big issue with it is, in case folks on the show don't know, I live in Michigan. We get some pretty brutal winters here sometimes, right? So, I mean, it's not unusual for temperatures to once or twice a winter reach, you know, -5, -10 degrees
Mm,
Fahrenheit for short periods, right? I don't know any battery on the planet that could deal with that reliably over any period of time, right? So, that is a situation where that kind of mainline power would be fantastic to have. But you're right, there's not a lot of options out on the market that have that as an option, which kind of surprises me.
yeah. The world has gotten to, oh, lithium is great. No, lithium is a serious fire hazard for one thing. And no, I don't. So yeah, so I settled on one that is a little bit of both. It does have a lithium battery pack in there, and apparently you have to have that in there, but it does run off of mains power, so
Mm,
it does both. So okay,
nice.
now I'm working on the camera that because the doorbell cameras can only see so much,
Right.
and it doesn't help you much if dude runs up with something over his face and then spray paint your.
Right.
So I need to get, so yeah, learning all these things like you're talking about is, ooh, how do I, what about this? What about that? It's
Yep.
kind of the same thing you were just talking about. Like, all right, well, now I have all these new things to be afraid of that I never thought about before, and that's fun.
Yep. Yep. I will give a plug to Ubiquity on some of that stuff. I really like Ubiquity's gear. Not just for switching and firewalling and all that, but they have a whole line of like you know, home cameras and doorbells and all that stuff. So they all tie into a UDM Pro. There's a bunch of different consoles that they can tie into, but I use a UDM Pro here at the house, and I have nothing but amazing things to say about it. So,
No,
um,
I
so
went with
that's
the Eufy brand,
oh, okay. Yep,
so we'll see.
yep. So
Ubiquity didn't even come up in all my searches, so I don't know what's going on there. They
yeah,
didn't appear in any of the lists.
Ubiquity didn't really. Wow.
Not a single one. This is the first I've heard that they even did that. But I also had, it's interesting. Everybody's had their own stories, but everybody's plugging Ubiquity for a while. Then I went and bought some for my last house, and it was horrible. I hated it. It was so
Oh,
bad. It
oh
was
no.
so bad.
Oh,
Oh no, I'd rather have Netgear than this. This is so bad.
did you buy like the consumer grade stuff?
Yeah,
Okay. Wonder if
Yeah,
that's maybe the why.
it's got to be, but it was so bad. I'm like, I'm not
So
doing this. Remember when Cisco bought, who was that? The blue brand?
Meraki.
No, way older than that.
Oh,
The
gotcha.
little blue router that everybody had back in, 2003. Who was that? Linksys.
Yeah.
Yeah, remember when Cisco bought Linksys? So you've got Cisco, who's awesome, and Linksys, who's not. Right? That
Yep.
was kind of the ubiquity thing here. It's like it seems like their commercial stuff is amazing, but man, that stuff it was so bad. I'm like, no, I'm never doing this again. That's
So the UDM Pro is kind of like it's for the SMB size or mid-size business, right? There's a UDM. I don't know. I can't think of what UDM stands for right now, but that's more intended for home users. But I got the Pro, and I will say that my WAPs are like the business grade WAPs. I don't know. I think I dropped 150, 200 per WAP on there, and they're PoE powered. I've been super happy with it. So I'll have to. That's interesting. I'll have to look at their consumer line because I've never used the consumer line. So if
for
folks,
consumer stuff, I've been using Eero, and I know we're kind of getting way off our thing here, but we're kind of on it, and people are gonna be like, well, all right, well, let's talk about it.
right,
But
right,
so yeah, I've been using Amazon Eero, and I have all the concerns I think that everyone has around like Amazon has way too much knowledge of what's going on in my house, and I don't like that. But oh my God, are they easy and stable?
yeah,
They're a child could do this, and again,
right,
I have a lot of complaints about the Amazonness of it all. But man, for as little as they cost, they just do what they're supposed to do. You don't ever have to mess with them. Like, oh, see, this is what
nice,
I wanted that ubiquity stuff to do, and it's euros were cheaper. So like,
right, yep, yeah. That's not the first time I've heard that about the Eero brand. So definitely
I
interesting.
I love them. I mean, and I hate to say that because again, there's all this. They have no like the only you have to be on the internet to manage them through your Amazon account. You can't.
Okay,
There's no CLI. There's no local anything, and it's.
interesting.
I get real twitchy when I think about that part of it, but you
Well,
know,
well, if it's been working, I mean, it's not broke, don't fix it, right? So
it's. I mean, it is. You just plug it in and you do the thing, and it's like, okay, you're on the internet now. Have a nice time, and it's automatic mesh. So like, oh, I can't quite get anything to house, over here. So okay, you just put another Eero over there and plug it up, and it
see, that's
jumps in, and
nice.
then I'm
That's super
sitting,
nice.
and I'm over in Chicago for the weekend or something, and ah, reboot the network because my kid can't get on or something,
Yep, yep.
or turn the network off because my kid's being from Chicago. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah,
it's got
yeah,
all this.
yep.
It's yeah. So there's always this. It makes me itchy with how a lot of the little very invasive in my opinion, but man, it just does what it's supposed to do, and
Oh yeah, can't go
rock
wrong with
solid
that.
stuff.
Can't go wrong with that.
So what I wanted all the other Wi-Fi manufacturers to do, none of them were seem to be interested in that. So Amazon's like, oh, well, we'll do that for trade your privacy, but we'll give you the reliability you need. Like,
Interesting.
okay,
Well, folks,
sorry.
I'd love to get your feedback on this. What are you guys using at home? I just, I've heard so many variety of options that sysadmins use for their own network at home, right? I've heard the sysadmin that uses top of the line Cisco everything at home, but I've also heard the sysadmins that, are no, I use carrier pigeons at home. No digital anything in the house, So there's like a very wide spectrum, right? So I'd love to hear what your guys' thoughts are on it.
I'd like
Again,
to hear the problems you needed to solve too, because like one of the things I ran into with a
yep,
lot of them was so like what the Eero does that I love is you got your mesh network like a same, but you also have two Ethernet ports on every device. So you can take like I'll carry it over here to my brand new TV and put the Eero next to it, and it's in the mesh, and then I can Ethernet my TV into it. So net, I have fewer wireless devices in my house than I would otherwise because I can set them close to an Eero and then run Ethernet locally.
right,
You can use it as if you want to do, because like if you're fortunate enough to be able to run wiring through your house, which I have in a couple places, you can use your Ethernet as a backbone,
right.
or you can use it as a Ethernet to Wi-Fi bridge, and it just freaking works. And
That's
so a
really
lot
cool.
of these other devices you're going to buy, you can't do that. Like
Right.
okay, we'll mesh, and that's what I ran into, like the Ubiquity. Yeah, it'll mesh, but you got to do this other thing if you want to do
Right.
Wi-Fi to Ethernet bridge, and like, and of course the Wi-Fi didn't work on it very well. But
Ugh. Oh, interesting. Well, folks, love to hear your feedback on that. It's always fun discussions. We're gonna have to do a this kind of ties in with an episode idea I had, Eric, and that would be like uh you know, building a low budget lab, right? It kind of ties in with that. So I think we're gonna have
oh
to do
yeah,
that type of
that's gonna
episode
be a
here
really good topic. Yep.
in a little bit. Yeah, for sure. So well, I'm gonna do my my nerd hour topic here fairly quickly. More of just a comment than anything. So I've been working on this side project. I've been talking with a lot of folks um, about how I've had to spin up services in M365 for various things, right? DMARC, email, break glass accounts, the whole nine yards, like a proper production M365 tenant. Well, this entity finally needed its own phone number, and I'm like, you know what? I don't want to deal with Verizon, AT&T, whatever. So I went into the M365 Admin Center. I purchased myself a Teams standard phone license with a calling plan, and about 7 minutes later, I had a working phone number. I was pretty shocked at how seamless it was. Super seamless, like, okay, here's a phone number. What user do you want to assign it to? Assign it to this user, fill out some information, click, 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 done. Right? Now, there is one kind of, from what I've read, I've never been much of a telephony guy. I'm going to say that first with this. I've always been fortunate to have teams that did that for me. But I will say I, through this process, learned of uh, kind of a telephony process called KYC, Know Your Customer. It's like a regulatory thing on the phone side where if, I'm a phone provider providing phone services to you, Eric, I need to verify certain things about your business, your domain, that you are authorized and an entity that is viable to use this number I'm providing to you, right? And I'm sure that's to protect against malicious phone calls, texting, all that stuff, right? So,
Yep.
definitely, it was interesting learning about that whole process. Anyway, what do you think, Eric? Should we get to our main topic of the episode?
Let's go for it, man.
All right. So again, folks, we are talking about documentation today. Like I said, it's at the start of the episode. People kind of fall into two categories here. They either love documentation or they hate it, which is kind of interesting. I feel like more people gravitate towards the documentation, blah, that side of the fence here, right? So I wanted to start with, why do sysadmins hate writing documentation? And the one that comes to mind, the one reason that always comes to mind is, I'm a sysadmin. I have a to-do list that's a mile long. The sky is falling all the time. I just fixed whatever it is I was working on. I need to move on to the other thing, and documenting my fix is kind of extra work that doesn't directly solve any problems, right? That's the big one for me. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Eric, but that's the one that always creeps up in the back of my mind when it's like, I should really document this,
The time crunch is really it. It is the
Yep.
big one. And the secondary one would be, I am never going to forget that.
Right. Oh, I'll say that too. It's so
That was
funny.
so hard and it ruined so much of my life. There's no way I'm going to forget about that.
It's
And let me
funny.
tell you the truth, folks, is you're going to remember how you felt. You're going to remember how frustrated or angry or whatever, but that's what you're going to remember. You're not going to remember how to fix it. You think you will, but you won't. Unless you're one of those fortunate people like an eidetic memory or something. If you're just a regular person, or worse, you're like me and you have ADHD, then no, you're just going to, I know this made me so mad last time, but I can't remember what I did.
I have a funny story around this. I don't remember what it was. It was something in VMware Hyper-V years ago. I don't even remember what it was. And same thing, I'm like, I'm going to remember this, but you know what? This will make a really good blog post. So I made a blog post. A couple years go by. I apparently forgot how to do this thing that I blogged about. And I had forgotten that I had even blogged about it. So I sit down, I'm like, all right, I guess I'm going to go search and see what I got. I'm doing searches and my website comes up. I'm like, I wrote a blog post about this? What the hell? And I'm like, look at that. I did. Sure enough, I've solved this problem before. So it's the perfect example of how documenting a process, even if it's just for yourself, will come back and rescue you later, right?
Do you know how many people got into the line of work that you and I are doing, the public persona stuff, by saying, I need to write this down anyway, if for me, if for no one else, why don't I just go ahead and publish it? Then
Yep.
like 10 years later, people are like, hey, you want to write a book? Want to come write blog articles for us? Can you help me?
It's funny how that works out, right?
Yes, it is exactly how it works. Because I don't think I've ever completely forgotten that I wrote about something, but I have before. Like, I know I fixed this, so I'll Google my name and then the problem, and it'll okay. Yeah, here's what I did. So
It's I tell you, I can't tell you how weird of a feeling it is, and you've probably had this too, Eric, is like when you're Google searching a problem and you come across yourself. And it's like deja vu. It's like, wait, what? This I don't know, it's just a weird feeling.
it is.
So, but like I said, it kind of highlights the point of how important it is to document stuff, right? And I think I admittedly I was kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel here when I wrote the outline. But I think one other area where I've seen sysadmins kind of have some friction when it comes to documentation is I've seen some teams, and I've been on teams that do this actually, where there seems to be a clash of, okay, we've decided we need to do documentation, but how do we write said documentation? Do we do it
Yes.
very technically minded? Do we do it more from a
Yes.
narrative style? There's like this friction between people in the group that are like, what style should we write it in? Now,
Yeah, and I'd love to give a whole lot of blah blah blah. Let me tell you something. If this is where you're at, knock it off. Who cares?
right?
If you're sitting there and I'm going to plug I'm going to plug a product now. It's free, so there you are. Greenshot. If you have not used
Mm,
Greenshot, go download it right now. It has two features in it that make it better than every other tool you've ever used. Maybe some paid ones are better. I don't know, but like I think I'm getting a little indignant in advance because I keep seeing people, oh, the new screen capture and when the clip whatever that is, and Windows 11 is so great. Like, no, it's awful, and I'm going to tell you why. You go in a Greenshot, it does two things. It has capture last region. So, like, let's say you're working through a wizard. You take one screenshot of the page one, click
yep.
next, hit capture last region in Greenshot, and it takes the exact same square that or rectangle, whatever that it just took. So you can duplicate that 100 times. You don't need to sit there and redraw the square every
Yep.
time. That's great. I can't even tell you how much time that has saved in my documentation efforts and writing and everything else. And then the other one is when you hit the print screen button and it does, all of them do the same thing. When you hit print screen, they take the actual whatever's on the display and buffer that out and they lock it. So there's like you're looking at a picture of the screen within whatever your screen captures overlay tools are, right? As it was at the moment when you hit print screen. So then it puts its little crosshair on there, just like all the rest of them do. But what it does that none of the others seem to have figured out how to do is it zooms in on. So you've got your cursor and then you've got a zoomed in image of it. So as you move over, it'll help you get right down to the very pixel that you want. And if that's like, if you're on a 4K screen, especially where you're just like, I can't quite get it, the mouse cursors, keyboard cursors, up, down, left, right, then you can move it pixel by pixel until you get exactly where you want. And then click and drag. When you get to the other end, you can do the same thing. You get the other side, you keep holding the button down and use the keyboard to get it right where you want it and make a perfect capture every time. And it's free and I love it and I use it for all my documentation efforts. So where I'm going with all that is if you're sitting there like, oh, geez, what writing style do you use? Let me tell you something. Who cares? Go in, you're doing something, screenshot it. Even
Yep.
if you don't write any supplementary data, screenshot it, toss it into OneNote. It's fine. It's better than nothing is what I'm getting at.
Yep. And
Bad
that's
writing, bad pictures, bad documentation, so much better than none.
Yep, and that's exactly what I was going to say. Some documentation is better than none. And I I can tell you the one service ticket I was working on years and years and years ago on my MSP days that really made me appreciate good documentation. So we have a new customer that we're onboarding, and oh hey, we so and so's computer got replaced, but we don't have Office installed. This is back in the days of Office on-prem. M365 was barely a twinkle in Microsoft's eye at this point. Anyway, I go on site, and it's a small business. I think it was small local government, right? Actually, which adds a whole other layer of complexity, right? Because government entity. But do you think that they had documented the CD key or the licensing that was used for the version of Office that
No,
was on that machine?
no, they didn't. Oh,
And so I spent, I don't know, 3 hours tearing apart their server room, trying to find where the previous provider had put all that stuff, and I, that's three
maybe I'm going
hours.
to date myself a lot here, but I would pull the side of the cabinet off of the PC and put the licenses on the inside of that on the
Ah,
bottom or
okay.
somewhere away from where the fans don't get hit it or whatever. So yeah, oh, where's the CD key for this? Where's that? Just take the side off. It's right there.
That's a good idea. Yeah, I mean, this was a case where they were using bulk licensing from Microsoft. I forget what it was called back then. They've changed the licensing terminology a little bit over the years, but there was one of those deals where okay, you've got this key and it can be used
Even
for
still, you can print that off and stick
yeah,
it in. I
exactly,
mean,
exactly, and nobody had in this case. So not only is the customer paying for the new workstation that was being replaced, paying me to dig through their server room looking for a string of text, right? For 3 hours. Finally,
and at
it
that
just got
point, you
to
could just bought another copy and
exactly.
save
It got
money.
to a point to where we're like, you know what? It's going to be cheaper for you guys to just go buy a new version. And so I always think about that when I'm like, when you install something new, configure something, whatever, be nice to the next admin that comes behind you,
It
right?
might be you.
It might be yourself,
It might
exactly.
be you.
Be kind to future you, right? So,
Yes.
and I want to say, Eric, you mentioned in Greenshot, you know, I have historically done a lot of my documentation on Linux boxes using the K desktop environment, KDE, because KDE's native snapshot tool, Spectacle, does the exact same thing.
Nice.
When you go to take a new screenshot, the default is rectangular area, and by default, it's the previous rectangular area. It's the same
Very
orientations.
nice.
It's the same thing. So, uh, I'm not saying that everybody needs to go install a Linux box to do their documentation, but you talking about Greenshot, it made me think of that.
All my
Which,
Linux is like WSL or command line PuTTY. I don't have any graphical
oh
Linux
yeah,
machines. I don't think anywhere. So, and I
I've
haven't. Last one I used was GNOME. I haven't used KDE, and oh, I don't even know, man.
what version of
So
GNOME? Probably GNOME 2.
again, I don't think I have any surviving graphical installations of Linux anywhere. I don't know.
Yeah, in my opinion, GNOME 3 onward was kind of they lost their way. Sorry to anybody out there that likes GNOME 3. Oh, it hurt when they pivoted away from GNOME 2. Anyway, that's a whole different discussion. But your talk of tooling, where I was going with this was that kind of leads into our next point. Is like, okay, we've talked about why sysadmins should have documentation, what hangups to not, get stuck with. But I find that when you get the documentation into tooling that you and your team actually like, the process becomes much, much simpler.
Absolutely. It's just like so many. I don't care what the subject is. If you need the right tool for the job, it's so much better.
Oh, for sure.
So like if you're like all I have is Word, and it'll do. It's not great. It'll
Right.
do. And especially you get into like you have formatting problems, because Word is designed to be printed on
Yep.
8.5 by 11 or whatever. I guess I always use 8.5 by 11, but that it's designed for that. And so it's not great for just free form screenshots.
Yep.
Uh, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because like Not only will people get hung up on the writing style or whatever, like it's just like doing it is awful if you don't have a tool that can handle it. So
Yep.
keep going. I want to see where you're heading.
And where I'm going with this is like, you need to choose tooling that works for you and your organization. I certainly have my preference, and everybody knows what I'm going to say, and that is Markdown with some sort of code repo on the back end. And I guess I'll tell you why that's my preferred method is because it kind of goes back a little bit to that how should we write documentation method. When you use Markdown, there are predefined sets of rules as to how Markdown should be formatted. So it kind of organically solves that how should we write documentation. Markdown is a documentational language. And when you pair it with something on the back end like a Git repo, you have automatic built-in change tracking for all of your documentation, right? And so to me, that is like my preferred method for documentation. And, you can do things like pull requests and documentation reviews prior to commits. I mean, you can build entire workflows around it. That said, I'm also sensitive to the fact that not every sysadmin knows how to use Git, right?
Mhm.
It's, I find a lot of sysadmins know how to use it these days, but there's still sysadmins out there that don't. And, when I talk about Git repos as a repository, I'm also sensitive to the fact that there's some documentation that maybe you don't want living on somebody else's server somewhere, even if it's a private Git repo, right? That's where you could do something like GitLab and run it locally, on-prem within your organization and keep your documentation there. I think if you do the community edition of GitLab, it's free, right? So that's an option as well too. I guess that's my product plug for this episode is GitLab, right? But that said, when we talk about the fact that hey, some documentation is better than no documentation, again, if
Mhm.
all you have is Word and a file share, that's better than nothing. You can also look at things like wikis or using a shared OneNote document. I've seen many organizations use shared OneNote documents or things like
100%. I mean,
Confluence.
that was where I was heading is because like you don't ever have to sell me on Git and Markdown.
Right.
I'm fine with it. But let me tell you, there are a lot of people who just no,
Yep.
no, they're gonna no.
Oh, I know. I know.
Oh no.
It
Yeah,
seems like an
right. And
overcomplication, right? When you
especially
don't really know it.
when you don't know it at all, it is.
Yep.
And of course, it was fun. I did an internal presentation for my organization on Git because they have internally hosted GitLab, and so I was doing kind of like again, you don't need to sell me on it, but I need to explain it to other people, and I need to remind people outside of the UK the word Git. You remember Linus Torvalds is where he's from, right? So
Yep.
uh, the word Git is for an insanely difficult, complicated person. He used that name on purpose. It is an unpleasant tool. And he knew that going into it, but this is a whole different history. All version management is unpleasant. None of it is fun.
Yep.
So if you're like, I don't want to use Git, yeah, I understand. What I will say is let's go back to like if it's not easy, people aren't going to do it, and if they're
Right.
not doing it, then they have a disservice.
Yep.
So
Agreed.
I'm gonna jump up and down and say OneNote, and I don't mean that new everything has to be in the cloud OneNote. I'm talking about the good old fashioned ships with Office OneNote
Yep.
with a shared thing. And I am complaining as much and as often as I can about the new one that it can't read those nice OneNote files that. Like, I'm a sysadmin. Why do I have OneNote? Because I need to troubleshoot something. What might I not have when I'm troubleshooting something? Internet access, cloud logins, all the things I might need for the
Yep.
goofy new OneNote thing. Oh, and also, I just died in a major catastrophe. The admin coming after me, I didn't know he was coming after me, so I didn't add him to my cloud, blah, blah, blah. He can't get to my OneNote anyway. This is the stupidest thing they ever did was preventing us from saving OneNote documents online. So, locally, sorry. So I'm talking about the good old OneNote from Windows 10. Sorry, the Office. I think 2016. I think is when they stopped developing it. Does that sound right?
That sounds
And
right. Yeah.
and it saves locally. And as long as you've got permission to the folder, you can read it. And don't put your secrets in there. Get a secret server, vault
Yep.
something, but
Yep.
put your documentation in OneNote. It's fine. And it's so easy. You double click on it and then you just start pasting things in and typing and doing whatever you want. And you want a picture over here to the side, you can do that. And
Yep.
like I'll go in and you know what my version control is? I grab the little because as you type things, it like makes a little box for it.
Yep.
And you can grab that box and just fling it over to the side, like set over here. This is the old one. I don't do that one right now. I want to do the new one. But I still have the old one hanging off to the side in case I need to
Yeah.
steal something from. I mean, it's just ridiculously simple to use. It doesn't have some of the new features, because they're like, well, we don't want to develop out anymore. We want you to use our cloud only product that makes you spend a lot of money and it's totally unreliable and might not be there when you need it most. That's the one we
Right.
want you to use. But uh sorry, am I going off on a
No, no, no. This is
I'm really fussy that they took away the ability to work with local files. It's like, well, why did
that seems like a strange choice because, like you said, I mean, when the building is burning down around you and you need your documentation and you can't reach the cloud, I say it all the
yeah,
time. The
but
cloud's great until you can't reach it.
until
You
you
know?
can't reach it. And there's so many things. There's so many things. Some of them, and I have been at Microsoft. Like y'all forget what it's like when you don't have your internet provider in the same building as you.
Yeah.
It's they're like, well, when is Azure ever going to be down? Like in Seattle, it's not. In Southeast Iowa, it is. And it may not
Right.
be Microsoft's fault. It could be because a squirrel chewed through a line somewhere. You don't.
Yep.
What do they call it? The chain of responsibility from certain places to the cloud is too long for something as critical as system documentation.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Because they'll come back and like, well, how do you know your local file share is going to be up? Well, I don't. But what I do know is that there's only a couple things to worry about. Unlike when my stuff is in the cloud, I have a lot of things to worry about now.
yep. Not to mention, do a trace route to your cloud provider. Each hop is a point of failure potentially, right? A lot of people don't think about that. So,
No, they don't. And Microsoft was one of the. I don't, and it's hard to say because there's so many different people and different competing visions at Microsoft. It's always hard to say if they're not because I think they're pretty good about not throwing the other teams under the bus, even when it's not their fault. So
right.
I was about to say I don't think Microsoft thinks about it. Like, well, I bet somebody does, but then somebody else was like, I don't care. We're going to do this cloud mode and nothing else. And now there you are. So,
Right.
but the
Well,
OneNote team, no, shame. You did bad.
but it's like you said, some documentation is better than no documentation, and OneNote's a good place to start. I've seen many organizations use OneNote for that. I've seen a lot of organizations use SharePoint's built-in change tracking for change tracking as well too. It's not my preferred method because I feel like SharePoint is a unwieldy, slow, gross, nasty beast. It's good at what it does, but it's not my favorite thing in the world, right? So
Yeah.
anyway,
But then if you're going to do that, you can use Teams.
right? Exactly. You do
I mean,
documentation side of Teams too, yep. Because
which
it's
is not
SharePoint on the
entirely
back end.
different. Yeah. And then it's got a lot of the newer OneNote stuff plugged in. I mean, you still wind up stuffing your things in the cloud, unfortunately, but
I say that's the other
whatever
reason,
you make work, just
right?
whatever you make work.
Yep. I say that's the other reason why I'm gonna plug Git and Markdown again, because when you're working with a documentational repo, you've got a local version that you're working with before you push commits up to the repository, right? But
Uh-huh.
again, it's complex. If you don't know Git, it's very difficult to look at that tooling and be like, yeah, that's going to work really well. It's something you just kind of have to know before you can really buy into that method. So, the other thing I will mention before we move on to some other stuff here is that when we talk about tools, not talking about just the tools, but also kind of like, how do I want to say it? I feel like the documents themselves can be formatted in such a way that they kind of become a tool as well too. And I'm thinking about templates here. If you templatize as much as possible, it's going to be much easier to get everybody on board with doing documentation. So,
Unless they don't like your template. So
right, that too.
there's a lot of, I mean, I'm still going to go with, I don't care what it looks like. If you've got something, that's better than nothing. And I would love to have a brilliantly told narrative, by Stephen King writing my docs. I would love all that. But
And
Whatever you got is fine. However you did it is fine. Just get it done
yeah,
or started. I've
yep,
got stuff you go out there and you're like, wow, dude, you spent no time on this documentation. Like, that's true, but I did it.
that's right. It's here.
It's
I
here and something.
I will say where templates really shine for me is in situations where there is a static collection of information that needs to be associated with it.
I agree.
So,
I agree. Where I think where I was kind of getting a little bit of kickback is all of a sudden you've got a form and somebody's trying to fill it out, like, but I don't know, and now they're frustrated. Like, if we're making documentation frustrating, it's not useful, right?
right, right. What I had in mind was, I've seen many different incident response templates over the years, and most of them all have very common fields, right? Root cause, mitigation or remediation, who was involved, when did it happen? There's a set of key things that people want to know in regards to a particular incident. So, for example, I actually shared a Markdown template for incident response in one of the previous newsletters. I'll put a link to that in the show notes, folks, if you want. It's in Markdown format. Sorry, and people that know me are not surprised, but I feel like templates are important for those very static situations, right?
Mhm.
Where
Very
you
much.
have an event or something that is roughly the same every time, and you have like the same types of information for each case, but they might be variable. So you have to leave. It's helpful to leave blanks because it prompts the person that, oh yeah, I need to go get this log because we're going to need that with this document, right? I feel like it does a good job of prompting the user for all the things that you're going to need for a given situation. Again, it doesn't work for everything, every documentation thing, but it does work for some of them. So the next thing I have on my list here, Eric, is we've kind of talked about this a little bit already, so we probably won't spend a lot of time on this. Is kind of this idea of balancing accuracy with speed. I think we've been very clear. Something is better than nothing, right? But what I wanted to get into is like this concept of living documentation versus more static documents. And I to me this is more of a culture thing because if I don't know, let's say I'm a new sysadmin coming into an organization and they just have a bunch of these, they have a document repository that just has a bunch of old stuff in there. If I see a document that's like 5 years old and I'm searching for something, I may not look at the document that's 5 years old. I may brush it off, right?
Mhm.
And so I think where applicable, if you can push this culture of living documentation, it helps everyone because one, it helps everyone get in the habit of updating and doing documentation on the regular. But for those people coming in or those people that haven't needed documentation in a while, you can be fairly certain that it's at least somewhat current in that state. But again, kind of what I'm talking about here applies to some types of documentation. Of course, you're going to have the situations where, okay, you've got an application that runs on that one workstation in the back of the warehouse. The application's 20 years old. It hasn't changed ever, and it's exactly obviously that's a document that is not going to change, right? So I guess if I had my choice, speaking in generalities, do as much documentation as living documentation as you can and try and push that culture of living documentation. I don't know what other feedback or suggestions I would have along those lines, Eric, but to me, it becomes a culture thing at a certain point. And some organizations are very good about it. Some struggle with it.
Well, there just basically needs to be when you touch it, you update it
Yeah.
to current, like if
Yep.
something has changed.
Yep.
And I guess you could still wind up with some 5-year-old documentation on some things.
You could.
Fine,
Yep.
but if your culture is if it's 5 years old, it's because it hasn't changed in 5 years.
That's
It's
okay.
fine.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, agreed. And, I think if you're an organization that has a change control process, you've at least created how do I explain it? You've created a social contract between, individuals and the business that there is documentation in play of some sort, because that's what a change control process is, right? It's documentation. And so
Right.
if you don't have a change control process, at least look at maybe getting one. So,
Yeah, which is just as obnoxious, if not more so, than regular documentation, but
yep, more formalized, right?
it's more paperwork, more busy
It
stuff.
is.
It takes me longer to get things done if I gotta go through change control, but
It does. Yep.
fine. It is nice, and it is kinda nice too, because we always get the vendors who, "Well, you guys changed something on your end." Like, "Well, we have a formal change
Yep.
process, and if, somebody didn't do that, they would be in a lot of trouble, so
Yep.
no."
Yup. It's certainly nice ammunition in those situations
Yeah,
for
yeah.
sure.
It is good for the finger pointing. I change control is so invaluable when the fingers start.
The other nice thing it's good for is for large teams. So, when I was back in my MSP days, I worked on a team with, I don't know, 35, 40 different engineers. And we had a data center that we managed and maintained. And so you'd be working on customer A down on one end of the data center, and something all of a sudden would break, network broke or storage was unavailable, whatever. You could go in and look at change control documentation and, oh, Tim is working on this fabric for that customer on the other end of the data center. Come to find out they're on the same, whatever. That's a
Right.
hypothetical situation, but useful in those situations, right?
Yeah, change control calendar is it's horrible until you need it, and then you're like,
Yep.
"Oh, wow, that's so great."
Yep, exactly.
We're
Before
doing this at 9 a.m. on Tuesday, and it's 9:10 on Tuesday. Oh, I get it.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep, exactly. It seems like a lot of work and hassle, and like you said, until you need it, right? So, oh boy, I think that's about everything I had on the list, Eric. Am I
Well,
missing
there's one
anything?
thing that I really wanna hit before we go, and it kinda sparked whenever you suggested this topic, is that so recently we had a new hire, and this we had put this, new hire on a task to just, like, decommission a server or something. I don't something we did all, off and on all the time, and she's like, "It says here to email this team. Who is that?" And then like, "Oh, yeah, why didn't we just put the email address in the doc for the team that you have to email? And
Oh
then
yeah. Yep.
why, and then update this spreadsheet. Why didn't we just put a link to the spreadsheet?" And so on and so forth. So this person is like, "Oh, here's the doc. Just go follow the doc. Everything's fine." And then the person's trying to follow the doc and not able to do it. And I'm looking at this going, "This is," and this poor person's like, "I'm so sorry." Like, you did nothing wrong. You are finding the holes in our docs. I mean, it's
Right.
terrible. And like you said with the living doc, just put it in there. It's okay if like, well, that email address might change. Yep. And then I guess you have a doc that day, don't you?
Yep.
Right? Is it better to just have a like a email, Kevin's team in there, or is it have better to have a link to Kevin's team's email? Either way, you're gonna have to change something at
Yep.
some point, right? So just put it in there
Yep.
and make it so that the next person who comes in, because you're handing them the doc so that they can do it and not you. So make
Yep.
sure they can do it and not come back to you, or you're just going to wind up doing it.
Yep.
So and,
You
and
know.
it's kind of weird because like I know when we were writing these docs, whoever did it was very well intentioned and did not mean any. Right? It just sort of you got to sit back and go, wow, if I had no idea what was going
Yep.
on, could I follow this document? And
Yep.
all of a sudden you'd be like, oh no, no, there's a lot of question marks in here. And if you ask me, why didn't you put that email address in there? I don't know. I don't really
Yep.
have a good reason not to, but I didn't, or whoever. I didn't write the doc, but the ones I did write, same way. It'll be like, just email security team. Well, what's the security team's email alias? I don't know that. Do I email the head of security? I don't know. I have a question. Well, why didn't I just put the email address in there?
Yeah.
Because I know clearly. So,
That's a good point. I mean, it comes to that institutional knowledge that you just take for granted within your own organization, right? And
mhm.
so one of the things that we would do on our MSP engineering team occasionally is, if it was a slow day or something, which didn't happen very often, but there were, we would actually go pull out old SOPs. I think it stands for Statement of Process, if I remember right. I don't remember exactly what the acronym is, but basically it's a how-to document. is essentially what it is, right? We would actually pull those out and we would actually run through them trying to pretend like we're somebody that doesn't know anything about the
Wonderful.
organization,
Wonderful. It's exactly
And
what you should do.
yeah, and it could be difficult to do that sometimes, like try to, well, how do I pretend I don't know what I know, So it's
Well,
difficult, but
let
you
me tell
can.
you where to start, everybody, is your backup and restore docs.
Yes.
Those are the ones you have to know how to do. How do I restore anything, first of all? And then how do I restore the HR database? How do I restore the HR app? And this is where it starts. Because
Yep.
those are the things you're least likely to have the correct people around for and need as a
Yep.
restore operation. So start there.
And it's going to be 2 a.m. People are going to be tired. They're going to need to know exactly what to do and how to do it, right?
They are going to need steps that are bulletproof, 100%, no holes. It's just
Yep.
got to work.
Yep.
And if they don't, they're going to try to call you. And you know what the worst thing I can imagine is you're laying in the hospital. Oh, I just got run over by a bus. And somebody comes in and like, I need to restore a database. I'm like, what? What?
We're really sorry to bug you. Getting hit by a bus thing. We're really sorry, but we don't know how to get the HR software back up.
We can't get it back, and they just everybody's yelling at me and like, I don't know why.
Oh man. Well, Eric, hopefully we've convinced people that they should do documentation, even though it's not always the funnest thing to do. I guess, in short, if I would leave people with nothing else, be kind to future you or the next admin that comes after you. To me, that's the big thing, right?
Yeah. And I know we've talked about this before, and I'm probably going to say a whole bunch more, is don't do the whole, well, I know everything, so now they can't fire me. It makes me indispensable.
Makes you a liability.
It makes you a liability. They're going to try to find ways to get rid of you. And also, this industry is not as big as people think it is, and that kind of behavior will follow you.
Yep.
And it's just, don't. It's not going to work out in your best interest, period. If you're having that much bitterness with your current employer, you need to be spending your energy finding another job on one screen while you're documenting on the other.
Yep. Exactly. So, documentation. I'm sure we'll talk about it again at some point. But folks, if you have any thoughts on documentation, like I said at the beginning of the show, you can leave a comment on YouTube or Spotify or email us at contact@sysadminweekly.com. Would love to hear your thoughts on documentation and any tips or tricks or things that have worked well or horror stories or whatever. I will say we're coming up on October here fairly soon. We are recording this episode on September 7th. I would love to do a SysAdmin horror stories episode for Halloween. We'll see if we get there. But if you have horror stories about documentation, or lack thereof, or wrong documentation, would love to hear about that. So anyway, Eric, it's good talking to you as always, my friend. Always happy to have you.
Me.
Yeah,
thank you for having me.
For sure. And folks, thank you for spending some time with us. Hopefully you found value in today's episode. Again, like I've mentioned a couple of times, you can watch us out on the YouTubes, on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon. We have our weekly newsletter as well at newsletter.sysadminweekly.com. With that, we'll let you get back to your day. Hope to see you again next week for another episode of SysAdmin Weekly. Stay safe out there, and we'll catch you later.